This is our final week in the Guiding Light series. We've been talking about how to find guidance when life is hard to navigate. And one of the most challenging things in life is how to handle relationships. It can be hard to love some people because we've been hurt by them, or we don't agree with them, or maybe we just find them to be plain out annoying. Whatever the reason is, it's easy to get stuck holding on to feelings of irritation or anger or sadness or bitterness. But God tells us to love people anyway. The past few weeks, we've been exploring some of the words of Jesus in the writings of Paul. Paul was an early follower of Jesus who spent a lot of time investing in young churches around the world. The book of Galatians, a letter Paul wrote to the church in Galatia, and it's filled with advice about how to process things like anger and hurt and confusion. The Galatians were having a tough time agreeing on how to follow Jesus. They pointed fingers at who was right and wrong, and in Galatia, there seemed to be plenty of bitterness and hurt going around. But Paul wasn't going to stand for it. This is what he wrote in Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 through 26. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. And those who belong to Christ have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. If we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking one another, envying one another. Paul reminded the Galatians that God had already given them everything they needed to love each other well. They may not always know how to do it, and they may not be able to do it on their own strength, but through God's Spirit, they had the ability to have love and joy and peace and patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Just like a healthy tree grows fruit, Paul said that their love for each other would be evidence that the Holy Spirit was working in their lives. And Paul doesn't simply say we need to try harder to love other people. He says that we need to stick close to God's Holy Spirit because these are things that we can't do on our own. So how do we let the Holy Spirit help us love? Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to ask for help. You don't just develop these fruit arbitrarily that the Spirit develops in our lives. We actually have to seek them out. So ask God to help you develop these kind of things in your life. The next thing you can do is you can be honest. Sometimes it's hard to be honest about the things that are hard for us, the places where we're struggling, where we're experiencing brokenness. When we're having a hard time loving, we need to ask the Holy Spirit and be honest about what we're feeling. We also need to understand that we are supposed to experience love ourselves. Sometimes the Holy Spirit convicts us of loving other people, but we also need to know that God's Holy Spirit loves us and comforts us, can help us figure out how to love other people as we learn to love ourselves. What I would encourage you to do is to start with one person. Pick one person that you have a hard time loving. And it doesn't always have to be a big, grand gesture when you're beginning to love them well, but I want you to do something kind and generous. Go out of your way to communicate to them. Say hi. Do something small but meaningful because God's Spirit can help us to love.